Hello everybody, welcome. Today I'm going to talk about the difficulty of understanding my instancology, and it really frustrates me to think about it, and but anyway, that's a fact I have to take, and there's absolutely nobody who can understand my philosophy. But I have to dig out what's the reason for it. Why? And I'm a sort of a ghost or something, and why nobody can understand me. So that's a problem I'm going to talk about. Today's topic is why there's nobody, absolutely nobody, who understands instancology. Okay, that's a topic. All right. I summarized 10 points. Probably that is the case, but I don't know. If I think about more, I will let you know. But so far, I see there's at least 10 things that uh, uh, stops stop people from understanding my instancology. That's a problem. All right, okay, I'll start like this. Number one, it's Chinese, the language requirement. Okay, I know a lot of people, especially the English speaking in the English speaking world, they don't understand Chinese, and Chinese. The requirement of foreign language in recent years about Chinese is rising in the United States. I think it's all over the world. Probably it's like this because of China's background, because of its economic power, and then everybody can see it. So more and more people just started in recent years to understand, to learn Chinese. But a lot, I mean, 99% of the Western people who speak English don't understand Chinese. And especially the smart ones who know philosophy or whatever, who they regard themselves smart, they certainly haven't started to learn Chinese yet. That's a problem number one. So Chinese is the number one requirement. If you don't understand it, you cannot understand the instancology because the books are written in Chinese and the major ideas are written in Chinese. And 4 years ago, basically, I finished them, and now two books are out, roughly under 1 million Chinese characters. If translated, it can be equal to 2 million, roughly, uh, uh, English English letters. So that's English words. So that's a problem. I cannot do it right away, and I cannot find anybody who can do it, either with the knowledge or with the money. But of course, I don't have the financial support for that either. So that's a problem. And I don't believe my English is that good to translate it into English, and I'll wait for somebody to do it. Maybe if I cannot find it when I'm alive, probably after I die, somebody will. I believe so. All right. Okay. So Chinese language is a number one requirement. If you don't understand Chinese, there's no way you can understand my system, instancology. That's for sure. All right. Okay. The second requirement is you have to know English. You have to understand English in general. There's a lot, some explanations of some contents written in English too in my book. They are not the major one, they are only a small part of it, but you also need to understand English and to know the language well enough to read my book. Otherwise, you can easily get lost. You don't know what I'm talking about, that's for sure, all right? So English is necessity, is the requirement for understanding my book, okay? The third one is Chinese philosophy in general, or in that sense, I can say the Oriental philosophy in general. Okay, by that I mean, the Oriental philosophy mostly come from Hinduism and later on Buddhism. Okay, so you understand the two philosophies in general, or especially the Buddhist philosophy. And Buddhism came to China around BC 1 to AD 1, in that period. So Chinese developed its own philosophy. It's called 玄学. It's some idea, especially in the Eastern Han Dynasty and afterwards. So that's a special period in which people develop some metaphysical thinking, some ontological ideas. So that period I refer to in my book a lot. So you have to understand something like Chinese philosophy in general, especially that period, you can understand what I'm talking about, and that's for sure. And the next point is number 4 point. You have to understand some particular concepts in Chinese philosophy or in Buddhism. That is Wuxing. What is Wuxing? Or in my book, I call it pure Wuxing. Okay, there's a difference. In the Buddhism or Chinese philosophy, when the people talk about Wuxing, they means something that you don't need language to tell you what it is. You have to figure out yourself on your own. And the Oriental ideas are that there's a lot of things you don't need to say it, or the highest level. You have to reflect on them and figure out on your own. Okay, people in Chinese we say you have to 悟出来. If you don't 悟出来, you don't know what your master means. Your master normally doesn't give you direct information about what it is, and it depends on you enlightenment, your idea to tell him what the master is thinking. Some ideas like that. It's a little bit weird to the Western people, but that's a fact. Okay, you don't need a language. You don't depend on language to get the idea, to obtain the idea in your master's mind. That is a very important concept in the Oriental philosophy, in Buddhism and in 玄学 from Chinese philosophy. You have to understand this point. And when in the Instancology, I sort of elevated this idea of Wuxing into pure Wuxing. The difference between the two mostly or basically is what I mean by pure Wuxing is you have to go through the logical part. After you have gone through experience, you have the enlightenment or Wuxing to see things already surpass the level of language. Okay? Language has limitations. From Wittgenstein, we know that. And from everybody else, nowadays, and you see there's a like say American philosopher Rorty, and also says language has limitations. A lot of things you can feel, you can understand, but you cannot say it, right? That's the idea, okay? So you have to understand this part. Otherwise, you cannot understand my book, okay? Okay, next point is, the fifth point is you have to understand Western philosophy in general. And this is a pretty hard, pretty heavy demand on your part because very few people can understand Western philosophy in general. Most of the people only understand one or two philosophers, only know part of it. It's like when you go to visit a mountain and you only know a part of it, you cannot know the whole look or the whole situation of the mountain, right? If you, let's say you go to a national park in the United States, you know only a small part of it. You cannot know everything. It's the same thing with the philosophy. You can know only one or two philosophers, maybe even for those one or two, you still know some ideas of it, but not complete. But here the requirement is you have to know Western philosophy in general, okay? That I know is very hard for the Chinese. And to my knowledge, in China's history, in modern China's history, Chinese history, there is nobody, generally speaking, they know Western philosophy in general. They only, at most, know one or two persons, philosophers, that's all. Know some ideas. Nobody knows it in general. Okay, that's what I find out. All right? Okay. Next point, the sixth point is you have to know Western philosophy systematically. I think this is different from the previous point to know Western philosophy in general. What I mean by systematically is you have to know the logical connection between each philosopher or among philosophers. You can see the tradition. All right. Let me say it this way: if Hegel, the German philosopher Hegel, says his system is a summing up of all previous philosophers' work or achievements, how can you understand this? If you don't understand all previous philosophers, if you only know Kant, if you only know Fichte, if you only know Schelling, you think Hegel's work is just some extension of their work. No, it's not. Okay? When he said that, he means it. All right? That is a very important thing. You have to know it systematically. That is very important. If you don't see the logical link, you cannot understand my instancology, because why those philosophers' work are left in history, not any other people, there's a reason for it. That is a logical, that's a value. The history filtered all the other not valuable part, and only with those which are valuable and has gone through this to us, through history to us, okay? That's for sure, all right? Okay, the seventh point is you have to understand the philosopher and their logical link. And by that, I mean you have to understand. Sometimes you think you know them, but actually you don't. In Hegel's words, familiarity doesn't mean deep understanding. All right? You can be very familiar with them. You can understand every word they said, but you still don't see the link, the logical link between the previous one and him and the later one. You cannot see that. I know some people in China in recent past, in the half century, translated Hegel's work. But his name, I think it's He Lin. Some Chinese can understand what I mean. All Chinese who knows Hegel read the book translated by him. But he was, later, he became a Communist Party member. He turned himself into the communist. And he also wholeheartedly, not forced by anybody else. He just did it voluntarily with all his intention to become a member. He said the Communist Party gave him new life. That's what he said. And this is the guy who knows German well. He translated Hegel's work, all right? And he was famous in the last the first half century of last century, first half of the last century, okay? But from what he did, he is like Heidegger maybe to some extent. From what he did, I really can hardly say he understand anything of Hegel, all right? If he understand it, he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have overthrown his previous work. That's my point, okay? So, remember this. It's the same thing for the Western academic world, okay? People from the YouTube, in the internet, we can see a lot of people are explaining Hegel's work line by line, paragraph by paragraph, page by page. They know exactly what those German words mean, that German sentences mean, but they just don't see the logical link. And that's what I see it this way, all right? They don't, in other words, they still don't see why Hegel said this way, all right? To be honest is important. Like Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell says Hegel is too difficult, is the most difficult guy in philosophy, in the Western philosophy. And obvious that he meant to say that he doesn't understand him to the fullest extent, all right? He is honest at least. I think the same for Wittgenstein. But a lot of people just pretend to know it. Actually, I don't think they know him, all right? If you cannot see the logical link, you don't understand Hegel, that I'm sure. Even if you can know every word Hegel says, you can translate into English, from German into English, you still don't have a clue what Hegel meant. What's the significance of Hegel's work in the history of philosophy? That's for sure, all right? Okay, the number 8 is you have to understand, especially in the Western philosophy, the G7 philosophers in the West. What I mean by G7, I pick up 7 philosophers, most importantly related to my work. They are, number 1, Parmenides, according to historical period, okay? Number 1, Parmenides. Number 2, Plato. Number 3, Descartes. Number 4, Kant. Number 5, Hegel. Number 6, Heidegger. And the last 3, Wittgenstein. If you don't understand those 7 giants of philosophers in history, you cannot understand my Instancology, period. Okay? That's for sure, and you don't have any doubt. That's a necessity to understand my work. If you don't understand the 7 philosophers here, don't see the logical link among the 7 people. Don't read my things. You cannot have any idea what I'm talking about. Okay? That's for sure. I'm sure that is the case. All right? So, to understand Western philosophy in general, to understand the G7 philosophers in particular, is a necessity to understand my Instancology. And that's absolutely true, okay? Just as Hegel says when he was dying on his deathbed, nobody understands my system, even one person who understands it, and he made it wrong. Okay, something like that. I know probably a lot of people saying that they understand it because they can translate it. They know word by word. They know paragraph by paragraph. But it doesn't mean understanding, okay? The test of understanding Hegel is if you see the logical link, why it goes that way, and how he developed his system in that way, and what direction it leads to, and for the next one, who should go on to expand it. And if you see the logical link, you can be said to understand it. But that's just a necessary condition to understand my instancology, that's for sure. And if you even reach that stage, I'm not sure if you can understand instancology or not. And so that, but at least that's a necessary condition. Okay, all right. Number 9 is you have to understand something about philosophy of science. In other words, you have to read some Popper's idea, what's a falsification. You have to understand Thomas Kuhn's idea, what's a paradigm shift. All right, some idea about them. That will be helpful to understand instancology. Another requirement is you have to understand some mathematical logic or symbolic logic, like what's a predicated logic, or what's a first level predicated logic, something like that. When I use symbols, use those symbols, existential symbols or whatever, developed by Gottlob Frege and Bertrand Russell, you understand what I mean by those things, all right? That's some basic requirement too. But you don't need a lot, you only know some, that a little, that's enough, all right? I myself don't know a lot, but I know enough to be useful for my expressing my ideas, all right? The last point is, the most important point is, you have the will to pursue truth, all right? Nothing but the truth, all right? Remember here, you don't want to be like a sophist. You study philosophy for some benefit, all right? You treat it as a tool for some other end, in Plato or Aristotle's words. That's not good, all right? You have to think philosophy is nothing but finding truth, only for truth, not for any other purpose. You have that wish, you have that intention, you can go this way. You can dig into my instancology to try to understand it. Otherwise, I don't think you have the will or have the time or whatever to do the hard work to understand it. That's very important. You have to think there's nothing more important than to find the truth, to know it, according to Aristotle, all right? All man needs to know, all right? Excuse me. So, as a human being, you want to know the truth before you die. That's a very important, or maybe number 1 requirement to understand my instancology. I'm 100% sure instancology is the development of philosophy. Actually, it's put an end to philosophy, all right? That's another topic. But it is the logical extension of it, and so instancology with absolutology are the next stage in this field of philosophical studies. If you don't understand it, if you don't anything else, you probably, most likely, are sophist. You study philosophy for some other gains, some benefits, like a position, to be a professor, to have money, to have a power, to live comfortably, like people say, in some cocoon of philosophers, in every tower of institutes, whatever, that's your problem. I don't care. But as to this part, instancology is related, the new truth related, the fundamental truth, I call it, you have nothing to do with it. That's for sure. All right? Okay, that's all I wanted to say today. Thank you so much. Bye.